This is Christie Arkovich, student loan attorney in Tampa, Florida. And we have with us Melissa Solevilla at Carey Leisure Neal, personal injury firm in Clearwater, Florida. And she has her young adult son, Lance, in her office. And he's in college right now. And I wanted to cover just a couple quick things about what you should do when you're thinking about going to college, how to limit student loan liability out there, and what you should think about. So, Melissa, can I ask you a question? When did you, what did you first do when your son was looking to go to college? What did you first do in terms of how are you going to pay for this? What did you look at?
Well, our situation, we didn't have, we're not a traditional household. And so Lance has only been my son for 4 years. And so I hadn't had a lifetime to save for college.
Got it.
And so what we did, where we had to start, I didn't have a nest egg set aside for him. So I filed for, when he graduated high school, I filed for the FAFSA. I completed the FAFSA online form. And that was what basically the school required to tell us what the options that were available to him were. Okay. So that's where we started. And then we ended up in the financial aid office.
Okay. So can you pan over to Lance for just a minute? Hi, Lance. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Let me see your shirt. Education is important. What's the second? Fishing is important. I love that. I often have a t-shirt I'll wear during consultations with my clients that says student loans suck. Works well. Well, education is important, but that raises a point of view though. When I went to school in the 80s and 90s, we were always taught go to the best school you can, get the highest degree that you can. We were never told be concerned about what the cost of college is, what the return of investment was. It was more just go to school. No one talked about loans, and that's not good for everyone. And it's kind of problematic. What were you told? What did you go to school originally thinking? Did you go for, do you know what you want to do already? What's going on?
Well, I started going to school thinking I would do biomed as a
biomed
therapist.
Okay. And are you still doing?
Now I kind of changed my mind. I'm taking the business right now.
Okay. And that brings up a point for gap year. There's a lot of folks that we run into situations later in life where they've accrued a lot of student loans. And in part, it's because they would switch different majors or even minors as it went on. And it might have been good to take advantage of a gap year if they weren't sure on what they wanted to do. Do you have any friends or anything that are taking advantage of any gap years or taking time off to decide what it is they want to do?
No.
Not really? Okay. Well, it's one of the suggestions. Another suggestion we always like to raise is, when you're in high school, take college level courses if you can. We ran across someone I spoke with yesterday. Their daughter already has an AA even before they graduate. And she told me it was kind of funny. They get the AA degree before they get the high school diploma. Very odd. Do you have friends or did you happen to do that when you went to high school?
Well, I had friends that graduated with their AA as soon as they graduated high school.
Awesome.
When I found that out, I was kind of regretting not doing it, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah, it didn't exist back when I went to school, or if it did, I didn't know about it either. But it is a great way, and community colleges are also good. To get the AA out of the way, get the first 2 years. I sort of did that. I went to community college in Orlando, and then I transferred to Stetson, which is a private undergrad for my last 2 years. But reducing those fees, doing that is good. What about a lot of people put on living expenses on student loans? Did you have to do that? Are you able to live at home when you go to college? What's going on there?
Yes, I was able to live at home.
Oh, great. I did as well. So when you're at community college and then even at the school later, when you live at home, then you can end up where only the tuition is actually put on. And then usually I had part-time jobs that would pay for miscellaneous expenses and books and things like that. So that worked out well. Have you ever heard of, I just wanted to ask you this one question. Have you ever heard of something called the college scorecard?
Not
No?
really.
Okay. So when you're deciding what college to go to, you can go to the admissions offices of a lot of colleges and they'll tell you something about their school. Some of those schools, if they're particularly the for-profit schools, they would, maybe not be as honest as they could be. That they would have posters on the walls, glossy brochures talking about what it is that they offered as a college. And it turned out that not everything was as they said it was. And so when someone graduated, they ended up with a degree that didn't help them get any employment. And so the college scorecard is something the Department of Ed created, and it's updated regularly. And it basically shows, well, 10 years after graduation, here's what you can expect. And I love that because it's basically, it holds the schools a little bit more accountable. It doesn't favor one school over the other, at least not that I could see. And it basically says, all right, well, 10 years after graduation, here's where the student can expect to be. And it also shows in terms of, salary ranges and things like that. It also shows graduation rates, which I thought was hugely important because we often will see a client who they're trying to pick, and we don't usually have clients of this nature. We're usually dealing with the loans afterwards. But once in a while, we'll have someone who comes to us for some pre-planning. And so they'll look at college A and college B. And college A has a graduation rate of 30%. College B has a graduation rate of 85%. Well, I'd want to go to college B. I'm much more likely to, actually have something for my money at the end. So you might spread that around to any of your friends who are still looking at, making college decisions. That college scorecard, it's a free resource. Department of Ed has it and it's regularly updated. I think it's great. I like it. So, is there any questions you have regarding the financial aid system or student loans in general or grants or anything like that?
No.
Nope, not really? Okay. What year are you in?
I'm in my second year.
Second year. Great. Okay, good. Suggestions. Try to take advantage of any internships or externships as much as you can. It gives you good things on your resume, but it also gives you practical skills as well as contacts, and those contacts are huge. And so they're more valuable than you think. I know they don't come out in the first 2 years, but usually in the third year and fourth year, they become pretty valuable. So Melissa, can we switch back to you for a second?
Hello.
All right. So did you run across any problems or tips or anything that you'd like to discuss when you were looking into your decision to help Lance go to college, basically?
Well, he had a couple friends who were also looking to start college around the same time, and their parents had not gone through the college education system in the past. So they asked to kind of ride with us and go with us to talk to the financial aid office and the student loan office and kind of get some advice from somebody who has incurred plenty of student loan debt in her life. So one of the things that I felt was very interesting is how some students, and what I explained to the young adults was some students were eligible for grants. Mm-hmm. And some of the students weren't eligible for grants. And what I explained is that, some of that grant money was wonderful and take advantage of it and, get your education with as much grant money as possible. But second guess taking out a loan on top of the grant money.
Sure.
For living expenses. Do you really need the money for living expenses, or is that going to give you a very comfortable, frivolous lifestyle? Because the grants you're not going to have to pay back. The student loan money you'll have to pay back. So don't take out loans to go buy a new car, buy new clothes, eat steak on Friday nights.
We run into the problem on the back end where there's so many people out there that they don't understand how student loans work and how interest works and how it capitalizes and it gets bigger and bigger. And I have to say that a huge majority of them will say, I wish that I never took out loans for living expenses. They didn't need the money. They really didn't. and they regret the decision later. And it's usually they owe 2 or 3 times what they borrowed because of the cost of interest. So can you imagine how much that vacation costs, when they put on credit? And so that's a big problem.
You may have been well dressed in undergrad, but nobody remembers that, and you're still paying the loans.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you do have to get loans, we vastly prefer federal loans over private loans. And that's because there's governmental programs available that do reduce the amount of interest in terms of, how much you have to pay back. I shouldn't say interest, I should say the debt itself, the forgiveness of debt, and that includes principal or interest. And a little bit more manageable with forbearances and deferments and things. But those forbearance or forgiveness programs are actually quite good. It's just they're not understood very well, but they do exist. Now, with the private world, there are no governmental programs. There's limited forbearance and limited deferment. So what we usually will see with someone with a private loan is they might owe $750 a month and they can't pay $750 a month. And so they end up defaulting, which hurts their credit, but they still don't have any means of addressing the loan through settlement or something. So they're just hurting their credit unnecessarily. So I think if you do have to take loans, it'd be best to focus on federal loans versus private. But like Melissa said, trying to get grants and scholarships is something that is good. Also, paid internships and externships are great because they give a little bit of that spending money and those contacts that I mentioned, as well as practical experience. And all that's good. All right. So are there any other things that, how much debt do you think that your son would likely come out of school with? Have you ever talked with financial aid about what the end game is?
To be honest with you, we haven't. And
Exactly.
That's probably a conversation we need to have.
No one does. That's one of the problems. When we talk with our clients, most all of them say there was never an exit interview. We never knew what happened. We found these loans 4 years later. Some of them didn't even know that loans existed, because what happens is you're in the admissions office, you're signing paperwork that allows that paperwork to be used for other loans, like master promissory notes. And so they can tack on. And so it's important, I think, for everyone to go to the financial aid office at the conclusion and make sure that you know exactly what you have. And preferably every year, see it accumulating, not just be surprised at the very end, but at least at the very end, have a meeting where you talk about what loans have to be repaid, what they are, get copies of them if you don't already have copies. The grants and the scholarships, usually you don't have to repay, so those are not really an issue. And then get an idea as to what your monthly payment plan would be. So it's a good idea to do this during school, every year, kind of get an update on that. You'd be surprised at how often the payment plan is often not represented accurately. We'll have clients that say, well, I was told it'd be about $50 a month. It's usually never $50 a month. We're usually much, much higher than that. And so getting a picture throughout college and then an in-game, an exit interview is really important.
That also probably really would help motivate a young person to stay motivated to keep their grades up. True. And not slack off in school if they know how much that class is going to cost when they're repaying it.
That's a good point. Right. Yeah, excellent point. So we have on our blog, we have a number of blogs and things that include tips about how to reduce financial aid, how to get the best bang for your buck and things. There's all kinds of information on our blog, and everyone can reach that by christiearkovich.com. There's a student loan survival center that talks about the different types of loans and things like that. But there are tips about how to reduce the debt, how not to sign the loans in the first place. And if you do have to sign them, what to look out for, like the co-signers that we mentioned before on another segment. It's important to make sure that if you're going to college, who's co-signed your loans, or if you're the co-signer, to know what you co-signed. We've had people come to us that say, I co-signed one debt. Well, in reality, it turned out to be 5, and they never knew it. And so it's important to not have the head in the sand approach, because it can only hurt you. There's nothing to be gained by having a lack of knowledge. Understanding the system is just as important as the college education itself. And I see people now starting to get it, but we've had a period of 10 or 20 years where no one paid attention to any of this. And the biggest thing I think I would recommend to folks is look at college as a return on investment. Maybe you don't want to go to college. There's a lot of things you can do that don't require college. But if you do go to college, then make sure that the return on investment will be there. Know what you're spending, know what you're going to pay back, know what you're likely going to earn and how you're going to pay it back. Come to that conclusion while you're in school before you make the decision. We have so many clients who come to us 20 years later, and invariably they say, I wish I'd never done this. I can't believe I did this. I always thought that lenders would never loan me more than I could repay. Aren't they making a good business decision? They'll never lend me more than they can. That's not their goal. Their goal is to get you to sign on a dotted line to make the loan, and inevitably they will sell it. That's just what happens. And the school, their goal is to get you enrolled. And so neither of their goals are aligned with how you're going to make a ton of money to pay the loans back. So make sure that the return on investment is there and that it makes financial sense. In many cases, it will make good financial sense, even great financial sense, but sometimes it won't. And it's important to know that, I think, up front.
Great point.
Okay, I think that's about it. So thank you, Melissa. Let's go ahead and I'll do just a quick little recording. Pip, I'll have you edit that out. And one last thing before we go, is there anything else you'd like to cover?
No, I think that was good.
Okay. All right, so let's just record a different ending because I kind of just wrapped up on that one. All right, so this is Christie Arkovich and Melissa Solevilla at Carey Leisure and Neal, and we are going to do some consumer tips every now and again. But this series is intended to help our young adult clients or children of our clients, trying to make sure that they have a general understanding regarding student loans, regarding how to purchase insurance, how much insurance might be needed, what to do if you are in an accident in terms of uninsured drivers and things like that. And so hopefully through this series, we can help educate our youngsters out there. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Melissa?
No, we're looking forward to the opportunity to share this information and make sure young people are ready to go and make good decisions.
Okay, thank you.